Good morning all, thank you all for coming. We've kept the group very intimate for the reason that David, we wanted a very closed audience so it would give you a good opportunity for questions and answers with David, and the group wasn't too big. I apologise, you'll see we have two different logos on the go. This is our old logo, this is our new logo that's launching in 2 weeks. We're moving into a sort of a European platform, so in case you think we're having an identity crisis, we are somewhat, but I promise you the Jackal and Hyde, the Hyde will come out later, I promise. So apologies. I'm Linda Davis, I'm the CEO of Next Generation. So this is part of our HR leadership program. We're going to be running a series of these over the course of the next 6 months, and it's all going to be around taking speakers in who are dealing in the European platform, looking at challenges within HR, talent, and across all of the spheres from onboarding and retention. So this is one of the start of our series, so we'll keep you informed as they go on. Please, by all means, give your feedback to us, post the event, what worked for you, what didn't work for you, and also if you have any topics in particular that you'd like anything covered, because literally we're designing our roadmap, we've designed about the next 4 or 5 speakers, but we can also, if there's a particular topic that's very hot, we can move it around, okay? So I literally am going to take 2 minutes and then I'm going to leave you with the expert, okay? So I just want to talk a little bit about attracting top talent. One of the key things that we're really noticing is that we're now dealing with 3 generations of talent, right? But also the candidate market has gotten significantly more sophisticated around what's driving them to actually move to organisations, what's driving them to stay in organisations. And actually those drivers, albeit financial is now the 4th decision within that decision-making process. So some of the key things are around the influence and the vision of the business. And this all ties into that whole attraction piece. How do we attract? So why would somebody take 10 or 15,000 pounds less if they believe it's got a really good vision and they really believe in where the organisation is going? These are the top key things. Freedom in the role. This is theming hugely, and particularly in the millennial generation. They want to have perceived freedom in the role, right? A trusted work environment. They need to believe in the company. They need to believe that the company believes in them. Surrounded by strong leaders. Leadership is key. If you look at anything that's theming out of Harvard, it is all around leadership. If you don't have it, people don't leave companies, they tend to leave leaders or managers. So investing in your leadership is huge in terms of really retaining that talent. Having a clear view of what's expected of them, it's really significantly important for them. If they know and they have the freedom to do the role, they will tend to deliver. And a really good example of this as an organisation is Netflix. So I don't know, do any of you know Netflix as a business model? It's actually an incredible business model. What Netflix say to you is, here's your job, here's what we want you to do, tell us what skills you need, now go do the job. If you don't do the job, there's significant consequences. If you do the job really well, there's significant rewards. And as a product of that, Netflix have really boomed as an organisation, and they give huge freedom across the bandwidth of people's scope of roles, but everyone works very independently. And it's a very interesting model. You should have actually a look, if you get an opportunity, look at their value system, look at literally all of their core beliefs within their organisation and the type of talent that they attract. They tend to have literally B+ or A players across all. Workload reflective of the role. They want to make sure that they are able to do the job within the hours that they are doing the job. So if you overload your staff or if you underload them, it has the exact same consequence. Good rewards package, right? Now, it's about benefits, it's about the softer stuff, and this is really theming. Salary, yes, will always be important, but it's about what does the company, and this is all theming from companies like Airbnb, Google, free food. So to give you an example, I had a meeting with one of our clients, and she was saying they're trying to attract German customer service speakers, and the reason why they're not attracting them is because they're paying them the same amount of money as Google, but Google are giving them free food. So they're automatically saving 5,000 euros on the food alone, never mind anything else. So when I talk about the rewards package, it's actually about the whole holistic perspective. The impact is the next thing, and this is something that as we grow as an economy, and recruitment is one of those areas where we're first into recession and first out, and we're seeing huge growth in numbers. Currently in Ireland there are 27,000 open IT vacancies. That's due to grow to 45,000 by 2017. There are 12,000 open digital vacancies, right? And it's only going to grow bigger, right? So we got to think about what is the impact to your organisation. It's going to reduce competitiveness. It's going to reduce your ability to service your clients. It's going to slow your rate of innovation. you don't have the talent to innovate, you can't innovate. Increased employee turnover. So if you're bringing people into your organisation and they're only staying 9, 12 months, people will assume that to be a theme in the business. So they will see it as a landing job, not as a career. And it's really important to have a think about those things when we feed it back into what do we actually offer those employees in order for them to really stay through the good times and the bad times within a business. Lower rate of employee engagement. They'll turn up, they'll do their job. There are 3 types of employees, right? One is the check collector that just really wants the money. But the other is the doer, and they'll just do just about enough to keep their job, but they won't help your business develop. And that's where those employees get stuck in that engagement loop. They're not engaged, but they need the money. And they'll stay doing the job just about above the line to keep their job, but they will move as soon as something much better comes along. And you also have to be very cognizant that with the market, we're now out of a recession out of 7 years. So companies are becoming, there's huge amount of IDA attraction into Ireland. Companies are becoming hugely attractive. So everybody here is going to be looking at who's going to attract me, who's going to excite me the most. And to give you an example, even in the recruitment process alone, senior managers are now making sure that they're wooing, whereas typically offers have gone through HR, down to the candidate, and now a lot of the senior managers who want, or the leaders that want them on their team, are getting really integrated into that recruitment process all the way through, even down to offer stage, query stage and onboarding, to get the people really bought into their business. So even thinking about that in your recruitment cycle might be hugely important, because if you're hiring senior marketing people and the CMO is calling them because they really want them on board, it makes them feel really, really valued, because they know that that's the leader that they're going to be working for. So even in reflection around your engagement for literally attracting talent is hugely important. Increased compensation costs. So what will happen is you get high turnover. In order for you to attract the right talent, you're going to spend more money and more money. You've got to retain the talent that you have, and you've got to attract like-minded talent. If you've high turnover, increased compensation, you're just going to be throwing money at the problem to get the talent in, which is exactly that conversation I had with a client recently with them versus Google. They've had to throw significant amount more money at the problem, whereas if they came up with a different EVP or benefits package for the employee, they could actually probably attract them at the same price point. Now, I'm going to leave at this point. I'll have to excuse me. I do have to get on a flight to go into Europe for business, so I do apologise. But I shall leave you in the far more significantly capable hands than me, David Collins. So I'm going to let David come up and talk about this. He's a specialist. David is within the top 20 HRM influential thinkers, strategic thinkers within Europe. So this is his specialty. He consults for major organisations across Europe. So I'm going to leave you in David's capable hands. All right.
The second thing then we move to is the idea of talent pools. So again, 15 years ago when we talked about succession, we'd probably be using GE as an example. 50 years ago, GE had succession plans that were 30 years deep. So 30 years into the future, they had names against boxes. How many organizations could do that 3 years into the future, 5 years into the future? Very few now, right? Because things are much more dynamic. They change more quickly. People don't stay with organizations for 50 years in general. So a talent pool is a much more dynamic approach to succession. It's about thinking about high potential, high performing people which the organisation can draw on to fill those critical roles. It's the proactive identification of talent. It's not reactive. So as we look to the future, we try to forecast the requirements we'll have in terms of the type of talent we'll need and the number of talent we'll need. So it's kind of thinking like talent as a supply chain. So trying to think about qualitatively the skills we'll need. So as the organisation evolves, is it going to look broadly similar? Are the types of people, the geographies of people likely to be the same, or are they likely to be different? So that's qualitative. And quantitatively, how many people will I need? Am I likely to be broadly the same size? Am I likely to be significantly bigger? And again, we see the idea here of scenario planning. So again, an example of where HR can become truly strategic. When an organisation is thinking about strategy and its scenario planning into the future, what the organisation will look like, then that's really important for talent. So, if I'm a domestic organisation now with 90% of my operation in Ireland, 10% internationally, If the objective is in 5 years' time to be 60% global and 40% domestic, then that has very clear talent implications. Where do I need the people? What kind of people do I need? What competencies do we need? It's too late to start recruiting them in 5 years' time. I need to be planning on that from now and developing the capabilities that I need and the types of people. So, to give an example, let's compare two organisations that have a very different value proposition in terms of who they serve, and see how that impacts. So we're going to look at high volume retailers in the US as an example. And Walmart, everybody knows Walmart, believes that shareholders are best served if employees do all they can do to hold costs down, and that's including the cost of labour. So Walmart's logo is always lower prices. And everything in Walmart's business model is about driving down cost. Everything. In the supply chain, in the stores, employee costs, etc. If you compare that to an organisation like Costco, people heard of Costco? Very similar business model in some ways, but it has set out its objectives very differently. We remain committed to running our company and living conscientiously by a code of ethics, to obey the law, take care of our membership, take care of our employees, respect our suppliers, and reward you, our shareholders. Shareholders are last on the list. And the attitude is, if we get everything else right, the shareholders will benefit. So it's not about driving value for shareholders, it's about doing things right, and everything will follow behind. Walmart is very critical of Costco and has been over the years, and said, you'd be better off to be an employee of Costco than an investor in Costco. It's a whole waste of money. Just to compare, and these data are a little bit old, but it's very hard to get data on Walmart, so we use the old data because they're broadly comparable, and these data are verified. So in the mid-2000s, in terms of wage rates, Walmart was paying about $10 an hour to its employees. We're looking, and specifically Walmart had a brand called Sam's Club, which was very similar to Costco. Costco was paying between $10 and $18. So after a couple of years, you could get up to $18. So nearly double. If you had more than 2 years service and you were at top of the scale, you got $2-3 grand bonuses a year in Costco. So significantly more in terms of reward. In terms of employee attrition, in Walmart, employee attrition was 44% annually. In Costco, it was 17% in year one and fell to 6% thereafter. And some of the analysis they did in terms of costing that, attrition was costing Walmart $600 million a year. It was costing Costco $240 million a year. There were other things like pensions were better, etc., etc. Another very interesting statistic they had was in terms of stock shrinkage, people nicking stuff basically or breaking it. The industry average was 1.7% of sales, and in a multi-billion-dollar business, that's a lot. It's reasonable to assume Walmart don't publicise it, but it's reasonable to assume it's at least the average and probably more, given it's at the lower end of the scale. In Costco, it was 0.2%. So when you look at multi-billion operations, that's a big number in terms of the value. So we can see Costco are paying significantly more for their employees, but it translates into some interesting productivity figures. So take that attrition level. So Sam's Club, that's the Walmart subsidiary, has 110,000 employees and they deliver 31 billion in sales. Costco has 43 billion in sales, but 40% fewer employees. So for the extra revenue, Costco employees are generating 21,000 profit per hourly employee versus 11,000 in Walmart. So the assumption is you can't make money by paying good wages in this industry. The reality is you absolutely can. Much better return in terms of employees, much lower costs in terms of attrition. In response to Walmart, so this is the CEO of Costco talking about Walmart's analysis that says you're better off being an employee of Costco than a shareholder. On Wall Street, they're in the business of making money between now and next Thursday. I don't say that with any bitterness, but we can take that view. We want to build a company that will be here in 50, 60 years from now. And these data broadly follow through to now. So taking the 2001-2006 example and starting at 100, Costco's stock rose by 55%, Walmart's fell by 10. So even the shareholders that that Walmart sets out to serve are doing far worse by a business model that's generated by, that follows a shareholder value model. And then the last axis of alignment, and this is where organizations get it wrong sometimes, is contribution. So is the value I bring to an organization totally blown away by my salary, for example? So the easiest example here is professional football, professional soccer. Most professional soccer clubs in Europe are insolvent financially, unless they have a Russian oligarch that paying for them. They're certainly not profitable. Why? Because all of the revenue has gone into player salaries. So the business model is simply unsustainable. And we see a lot of examples from the movie industry as well of the number of movies that don't make money because the stars are overpaid. So are people generating, am I overpaying people relative to what the revenue they generate? And the second key question here is, how do they achieve the performance they do? Because if you look at a lot of organizational failures, I would argue that a lot of those are driven by people whose behaviors on the surface generate returns, but they're not aligned with the values of the organization fundamentally. So are people's behaviors aligned with the values of the organization? How do they achieve the performance levels that they achieve? That's something that often falls true in performance management systems. We're only interested in the outcome, not the how. So that's the second part in terms of the contribution mix from an organization that's important. For an individual, what matters? The perceived fairness of reward. So the ultimate reward level is actually less important than the relativities. How am I paid relative to my peers? How am I paid relative to my performance within the organization? The research tells us that very high levels of wage dispersion between the top and the bottom of the organization create issues. That is not to say, Ben & Jerry's is a famous example of an organization that tried to pay a CEO only, I think it was 8 times the average salary in the organization, but they just couldn't get someone good enough, so they had to abandon that strategy. But from a CSR point of view, it's something they tried. So clearly your CEO is going to be paid many multiples of people in the organisation, but 500, 600, 700 times, which is often the case, maybe it raises some questions. So these are kind of some of the questions we can talk about, and I recognise they're a bit academic, but nonetheless I think we need to think about why people come to work in the organisation, what they bring to the table. Does the organisation fulfil its side of the bargain in terms of giving them what they expect? Whether that's contributing to something bigger than the organisation, whether that's following through on the development expectations that person has, etc., etc. And this idea is just the final slide, this importance of pro-social goals. That's the idea that the organisation stands for something more than the organisation. So why do I come to work in a day? And that's what Steve Jobs managed to articulate as a vision to those folks. We're going to change the world here. It's what NASA did very effectively. We're sending someone to the moon. It's not about money. It's not about anything else. When you have the whole organisation rowing in behind that, then that's a very powerful message. And we see a lot, again, for example, some of the things that are becoming more recognised. Employee development experiences, going and working in third world countries to development initiatives. There's very clear evidence that is a very significant learning opportunity for individuals, and it builds their commitment to the organisation. So things like that, it's more than the organisation, a higher order purpose. And there are a couple of organisations that are evolving that are about this. So the Maturity Institute is a UK-based organisation, and it's trying to create some understanding of organisations that create societal wealth beyond organisational wealth, the bigger picture. So the purpose, to increase both organisation and societal value by enabling organisations to move up higher levels of maturity. And it's about recognising that organisations need to contribute to wider society, not just the organisations. B Corp, anybody heard of B Corp? B Corp is a US-based organisation. They've just set up a branch in Dublin. They're certified in the US to meet rigorous standards of social and environmental performance, accountability and transparency. And in some US states, this mitigates the requirement of the organisation to make a profit. Everything they do does not need to be driven by profit. Whereas there's a fear in the US context that your shareholders could take you to court if you weren't doing everything possible to generate profit. B Corp certification in the US means that you can stand for something that's bigger than profit. You can stand for societal wealth. And we see a lot of organisations signing up for B Corp certification. So this is a trend that's becoming more common, this kind of idea of it's more than just the organisation, it's more than just profit.